and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other... Chapter 41.
Sorry about that.
After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. And behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up the 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke. And he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today, when Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. We dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Behold, in my dream I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows, plump and attractive, came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. I also saw in my dream 7 ears growing on one stalk, full and good. 7 ears, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Now therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land, and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Can we find a man like this, in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him ride in his second chariot. And they called out before him, "Bow the knee." Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plentiful years the earth produced abundantly, and he gathered up all the food of these 7 years which occurred in the land of Egypt, and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, "God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house." The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. The 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. There was famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph. What he says to you, do." So when the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. Chapter 11. Now when they drew near to Jerusalem, to Bethphage and Bethany at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the village in front of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it. If anyone says to you, 'Why are you doing this?' say, 'The Lord has need of it, and will send it back here immediately.'" And they went away and found a colt tied at a door outside in the street, and they untied it. And some of those standing there said to them, "What are you doing untying the colt?" And they told him what Jesus had said, and they let them go. And they brought the colt to Jesus, and threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it. And many spread their cloaks on the road, and others spread leafy branches that they had cut from the fields. And those who went before and those who followed were shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest." And he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. And when he had looked around at everything, as it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." And the chief priests and the scribes heard it, and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him, because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. As they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, "Rabbi, Look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered. And Jesus answered them, have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also who is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses. And they came again to Jerusalem, and as he was walking in the temple, the chief priests and the scribes and the elders came to him, and they said to him, by what authority are you doing these things, or who gave you this authority to do them? Jesus said to them, I will ask you one question. Answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things. Was the baptism of John from heaven or from man? Answer me. And they discussed it with one another, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, why then did you not believe him? But shall we say from man? They were afraid of the people, for they all held that John really was a prophet. So they answered Jesus, we do not know. And Jesus said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. Chapter 7. Has not man a hard service on earth, and are not his days like the days of a hired hand? Like a slave who longs for the shadow, and like a hired hand who looks for his wages, so I am allotted months of emptiness, and nights of misery are apportioned to me. When I lie down, I say, when shall I arise? But the night is long, and I am full of tossing till the dawn. My flesh is clothed with worms and dirt. My skin hardens, then breaks out afresh. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and come to their end without hope. Remember that my life is a breath. My eye will never again see good. The eye of him who sees me will behold me no more. While your eyes are on me, I shall be gone. As the cloud fades and vanishes, so he who goes down to Sheol does not come up. He returns no more to his house, nor does his place know him any more. Therefore I will not restrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. Am I the sea, or a sea monster, that you set a guard over me? When I say, my bed will comfort me, my couch will ease my complaint, then you scare me with dreams and terrify me with visions, so that I would choose strangling and death rather than my bones. I loathe my life. I would not live forever. Leave me alone, for my days are a breath. What is man that you make so much of him, and that you set your heart on him, visit him every morning, and test him every moment? How long will you not look away from me, nor leave me alone till I swallow my spit? If I sin, what do I do to you, you watcher of mankind? Why have you made me your mark? Why have I become a burden to you? Why do you not pardon my transgression and take away my iniquity? For now I shall lie in the earth. You will seek me, but I shall not be. Chapter 11. I ask then, has God rejected his people? By no means. For I myself am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham, a member of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not rejected his people whom he foreknew. Do you not know what the scripture says of Elijah, how he appeals to God against Israel? Lord, they have killed your prophets. They have demolished your altars, and I alone am left, and they seek my life. But what is God's reply to him? I have kept for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. So too at the present time there is a remnant chosen by grace. But if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise grace would no longer be grace. What then? Israel failed to obtain what it was seeking. The elect obtained it, but the rest were hardened. As it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes that would not see, and ears that would not hear, down to this very day. And David says, let their table become a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a retribution for them. Let their eyes be darkened so that they cannot see, and bend their backs forever. So I ask, did they stumble in order that they might fall? By no means. Rather, through their trespass, salvation has come to the Gentiles, so as to make Israel jealous. Now, if their trespass means riches for the world, and if their failure means riches for the Gentiles, how much more will their full inclusion mean? Now I am speaking to you Gentiles. Inasmuch then as I am an apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify my ministry, in order somehow to make my fellow Jews jealous, and thus save some of them. For if their rejection means the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance mean but life from the dead? If the dough offered as firstfruits is holy, so is the whole lump. And if the root is holy, so are the branches. But if some of the branches were broken off, and you, although a wild olive shoot, were grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing root of the olive tree, do not be arrogant toward the branches. If you are, remember it is not you who support the root, but the root that supports you. Then you will say, branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. That is true. They were broken off because of their unbelief. But you stand fast through faith. So do not become proud, but fear. For if God did not spare the natural branches, neither will he spare you. Note then the kindness and the severity of God. Severity toward those who have fallen, but God's kindness to you, provided you continue in his kindness. Otherwise you too will be cut off. And even they, if they do not continue in their unbelief, will be grafted in, for God has the power to graft them in again. For if you were cut off from what is by nature a wild olive tree, and grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these, the natural branches, be grafted back into their own olive tree? Lest you be wise in your own sight, I do not want you to be unaware of this mystery, brothers. A partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And in this way, all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will banish ungodliness from Jacob. And this will be my covenant with them when I take away their sins. As regards the gospel, they are enemies for your sake. But as regards election, they are beloved for the sake of their forefathers. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. For just as you were at one time disobedient to God, but now have received mercy because of their disobedience, so they too have now been disobedient, in order that by the mercy shown to you, they also may now receive mercy. For God has consigned all to disobedience, that he may have mercy on all. Oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable are his judgments, and how inscrutable his ways. For who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Or who has given a gift to him that he might be repaid? For from him, and through him, and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen.
The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Father in heaven, thank you for this day. Thank you for this time together, the end of this work week. I pray that everyone have a productive enough day today, but that they enjoy the coming weekend. Help me to be rested for tomorrow night, not to overlook anything and not to miss anything important, to draw everyone to the event that you want to be there. And I pray that your words would flow through me the entire evening, that lives would be changed and influential people would be motivated. Pray all this in your name. Amen. Hello. Hi, Mom. AC, you got here just in time. Go back and listen to the word later. I got notes. But I just kind of want to. Let me go through my notes real quick. Let's see. Joseph. So we have the fulfillment. Basically, this is the fulfillment. Verse 19. Pharaoh's. Let me back up a little bit. Joseph's in prison. He interprets some dreams. The butler and the baker. The interpretation comes to pass. One of them is restored to his position. The other one is hung. His head is lifted up from him. Comes to pass. And Joseph says to the one that's going to be restored, remember me. And the guy forgets him. So what's God doing here? I mean, God could have reminded him. And in our lived experience, I see this. It's like something good, something good is coming, or you have hopes of something good, and it doesn't come to pass in your timing. And then it comes to pass, or something better comes to pass. Right. And so we have our expectations, and like this is when this is going to happen. Like when I came across the Sogelman Tellurian story, like this is such a no-brainer story. It's such a brilliant story. It's so incredible. And it'll be a movie within 3 years. Right. That's the fast track. That's how fast you can make a movie. And then a pandemic hits, and then the thing turns into something bigger than a movie, and it's still unfolding, and it's still coming back. So God has his time. So Joseph has to stay in prison for 2 more years. Well, for Joseph, he doesn't know. He thinks, oh, indefinitely. Was that a crazy dream that I had, that my father and mother and brothers would all bow down to me? This was my chance. This was it. There's a guy that's going to go directly into Pharaoh's presence. I was able to talk to him. Good things are going to happen to him because I interpreted the dream. So it's a perfect scenario, and he's going to go straight to Pharaoh, and he's going to say, Pharaoh, hi, I'm back. I'm innocent. And Pharaoh's going to go, yes, you're innocent. Get back into your job. And then he's going to say, by the way, this guy told me I would be innocent, and it didn't happen, right? That was Joseph's interpretation, was this guy is going to go, and it didn't happen. It took God giving Pharaoh a dream, right? So God's like, I gave these guys dreams so that they would go into prison, or I sent these guys to prison, gave them dreams so that, right? It's all orchestrated by God. And God's like, okay, Joseph, long enough. Pharaoh, time for you to dream, right? This is God doing it. I took entirely too long to say. Verse 19, in the interpretation of the dream, Pharaoh's dream, notably, they bring Joseph and they shave him and put him in nice clothes. So he was a real unkempt. He was a prisoner. He was in jail. They clean him up, put in front of Pharaoh, and he says the 7 fat cows, and then 7 other cows came up after them, poor, very ugly and thin, such as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. So Pharaoh describes these. It doesn't say about the tares, the wheat and the tares, that nobody had ever seen tares like this, but the cows, the first dream. Pharaoh is getting a glimpse of something that had never happened, a famine that lasts 7 years, right? And maybe in his lifespan, there had never been a famine, right? Maybe they had never seen something. And it's 7 years, which means it's going to be bad, bad, bad. And then, so Joseph interprets the dreams. No problem. Here's your answer, Pharaoh. Appoint a smart guy to take care of it. Verse 33, right? I think he's 33. Did I get that right? Plenty of them. It'll be severe. 30. What? Oh, I'm reading the wrong verse. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. And I honestly believe Joseph's just saying that, not thinking of himself. I don't think he worked that into the deal. He just is objectively set a wise man. In verse 34, appoint overseers, plural, a wise man who can delegate to some other wise men. And Pharaoh, this is his decision, and God puts it in his heart. Well, you're the smartest guy I've ever met. You do it. That's the fulfillment right there. That's his, just in this incredible dream coming true after all his hardship, but persistent faith in the God, in the God of heaven. And here's the fulfillment. And in fact, here's the literal fulfillment. In verse 43, Pharaoh took his signet ring, verse 43, and he made Joseph ride in his second chariot, and they called out before him, bow the knee. What was Joseph's dream? that everyone would bow down to him. And here, Pharaoh is ordering everyone to bow down to him. It does happen literally with his family in the next chapter, but this is everybody. It wasn't that dream of sun, moon, and stars bowing down to him was, yes, his father and all the family, but it was symbolic of all humanity. This is God sending Joseph to save humanity, and they bowed down. And then when the famine comes, Pharaoh says, "Go to Joe." What do we do? Go to Joe. Go to Joseph in verse 55. All right, those are my notes. Yeah. So tomorrow. Woo! Yesterday, a musician confirmed, so we're gonna have a live musician. It turns out this musician that plays a traditional instrument from that area, that part of the world, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ottoman Empire, Kamacha. I forget the name of the instrument, but it's a bow. You play it with a bow. It's like, it looks like a interesting looking kind of guitar, but it's played with a bow and it's beautiful. And this musician also plays the violin. And I just put out a call to a friend who knows a bunch of musicians. It's an unpaid gig, and so this is a person, and she goes, she also plays the violin. And I'm like, wait, what? Going through my archival materials, Solomon's son was a classical, he was a concert master, he was a violinist, and I'm going through the archival stuff that was given to me, and some old like music, like Tchaikovsky, and some old music from 1906, some books that have the date that they were printed in 1906, 1910, 1916. Some that I have. There's some Tchaikovsky, there's some Bach. And I'm like, maybe she can learn some of this music. She can play the traditional instrument, and then at a certain point, I'll say, "Here, play the violin," as we're talking about the great violinist that was the son of Solomon Tehlirian. So that is another facet of this. And then some of the people, there's more people being invited that are coming, and it's like, I don't want to overhype it. It's going to be, and I'm recording it, so patience. You'll all get to see it all at some point. Likely some point soon, hopefully. If this event turns out the way it should, get a lot of people motivated to propel this thing to the next step. Yes, my daughter plays the violin too. I did invite her. She hasn't responded. I don't want the family is busy, but I will invite my oldest. I did invite my oldest. She won't be playing violin, but maybe she'll be inspired to return to it. Mom, that's family business. No, just kidding. You're distracting me. But that is, well, okay. Now that we're on that, my first recording, when I came into the life of Solomon Tehlirian's family and his son, and I learned that he was this iconic musician, violinist from the Bay Area. All three of my kids were in playing orchestral instruments, all three of them. And at the time, my oldest, Annika, was 14, maybe. So she was at the kind of the peak of her playing ability. She's amazing. And I took her, and I did a recital for Solomon's son and his wife. And so this was my second visit. Oh, it was my third visit to them. No, it was my second. And he was like, no recording. But I disobeyed. I videotaped him giving lessons, pointers to my daughter. So the very first footage, I have audio recordings of my interviewing him, but my very first footage of him is after the little recital, and then each of the children played a solo piece for him. He gets up, as he is a teacher, and adjusts her stance and says, "Try this." And so I'm so grateful I have a violin lesson of this great man passing it on to my daughter. It's like this spiritual connection, and that's not at all what I was planning on talking about, but that's what God wanted me to talk about. I love you guys. Jump over Jeff Zwirink. It's science day. Love you. See you over there.